Hey, how you doing? My name is Chris. Welcome to my shop. Last week, if you saw the video I put out, I think I called it Free Project Wood. You saw me take what looked like a piece of a branch. It was actually part of a bush. It was a piece of lilac. But I cut a pen blank out of it, and I promised you that I was going to turn a pen and then show you how I put a CA finish on a pen. Well, I've got the pen turned, so it's time to put the CA finish on, and it's time for me to show you how I do it. This isn't necessarily... I'm not saying this is the way to do it. I'm just saying this is how I do it. I know some guys out there, I've heard you say that you've struggled putting a CA finish on something, and so I figured why not put a video out there. I'll show you how I do it, and if you like the results, maybe it'll work for you. So that's what we're going to do next. Putting a CA finish on a pen. All right, before we get started, let me pull the camera in here and I'll show you all the products and or accessories that I'm going to be using today. Obviously, the first thing you're going to want to have is some sandpaper on hand, and I have this little, it's a 5-roll sanding pack, and it goes from 150 grit all the way up to 600, and that's just what I use to sand the wood up before I put the finish on it. Once I'm done with the sanding and I get it up to 600, we don't need this anymore, so we can put that away. You're going to want some paper towels that you want to cut up into little strips. These are not necessarily needed, but if you get them, I'm telling you, you're going to appreciate having them, just because these are non-stick bushings to replace the metal bushings that you use for your pen kits, so the CA finish doesn't stick to your bushings. I mean, not necessary, but you'd be glad to have them, trust me. As far as the CA finish goes, I use this Star Bond. It's a super thin, fast-drying CA glue, and I normally apply 3 coats of this initially, and then I'll reapply 3 more coats of this in the whole process, but we'll get to that later. Micro mesh sanding pads, and these are pads that go from 1500 all the way up to 12,000 grit, and I'll be using these as a wet sander. And then I use this plastic polish from Hut to actually polish the CA finish that goes on it once the pen is done. And I will use this twice in the process as well. So yeah, that's everything that I use. I'll have links for all this stuff down in the description if you're interested and want to take a look at it. But let's head over to the lathe and get busy. Put a finish on this thing. Okay, as you can see, I've replaced the metal bushings with these non-stick bushings. This pen required me to cut a tenon on it. So I've just gone ahead and put some tape on this as well, just because I don't want to get CA and polish all over the tenon that I need to actually epoxy another piece to. I've gone through and done the sanding, starting out with 150 and going to 600. The only advice I would give you guys, if you're new to turning pens or turning stuff like this, is that, while you can, and, sand it and get it down, sanding it this way on the lathe, when you're done, turn your lathe off and make sure you sand in the direction of the grain of the wood as well. That's going to help you take a lot of the scratches out of the wood that your tool or possibly even the sanding process may have put in it, so you can actually get them out that way. But I've gone ahead and done that, so this is ready for the first coat of CA. I'm going to be putting 3 coats on this, but I'm not going to make you watch me do all 3 coats. I'll just do the first coat here, and then I'll show you what it looks like after I've done the 3rd coat. So we're just going to turn the lathe on to the lowest speed setting that I have. Grab my little paper towel that I have cut up, my glue, and we'll go ahead and put the first coat on. All right, we're going to let that sit for about a minute or so, let it dry, and I'll come back and I'll put 2 more coats on top of that, just kind of build up the CA finish so that we can prepare it for the wet sanding that we're going to do next. Okay, that's the 3rd coat, and that won't take long to dry at all. What we're going to do next is, remember, we have the micro mesh pads that go from 1500 all the way up to 12,000. We're going to be doing a wet sanding with that, and I've just got a little, pan of water here. The key to this, though, when you're doing with these and I made this mistake when I initially started doing these, is that you don't need to use a lot of pressure with these pads. These pads, if you let the lathe, the spinning of the lathe and just the abrasive that are on these pads do the work, you can just apply really light pressure and go through all the grits pretty quickly. And it does a fair job, too. So I'll wait for that to dry, then we'll get started with the micro mesh pads, and we'll get that sanding. Okay, the 3rd coat is on there, and it feels pretty dry. So it's just time to go through my grits, and I'm not going to make you watch each one of them. I have to go through 8 grits here. I'll just show you the first one, and then you can imagine the rest, and I'll show you the last one as well. But let's turn the lathe on. The idea here is like I said, let the spinning of the lathe and the abrasive do all of the work, and you're just applying minimal pressure, going back and forth like this, and then on this one, and you don't need a lot. I mean, if you have spots on the pan blank that you need to work out, you may want to spend some more time, but that's probably good for that grit. And I'll move on to the next ones, and once I get to 12,000, I'll show you what that's all about. All right, that's 12,000. Just grab a rag here, and we can wipe this off, get it dry. And then the next step is going to be to put that plastic polish I showed you earlier on here. And let me grab that real quick, and then we'll get that started. Okay, that's pretty smooth. This is the polish, once again, that I'm going to be using on this. And to be honest with you, this polish, the grit in this polish may actually be a lot lower than 12,000, but it really does a nice job in shining this blank up. And what I want to do is get a fair amount of polish on this rag, this little paper towel, and I want to increase the speed of my lathe just a little bit. We'll get that in there and really work it in there until it almost goes away like that. And then over here, do the same thing. And I'm just working that polish into the CA finish. Get a new rag, and let's buff that out. And that really puts a nice, clean shine on these pens with that CA finish. And I'm not done yet. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back and completely repeat everything I just did, starting with 3 coats of CA, followed with the wet sanding, followed with another polish, and then this blank should be done and ready to be assembled. All right, and that is the final polish. We've got a quick buff here, and you can see the finish I got, which is, I'm telling you, it feels like butter going across it. It's just that smooth. But the best thing I can probably do for you right now is take this off, go ahead and assemble the pen, and see if I can't get you a better look at it than what it probably looks like sitting on the lathe at this angle. So let me go ahead and take this off. I'll assemble the pen, and I'll give you a final look. Okay, here you go. Here's the pen, all finished up. And I'll bring the camera in here in a little bit and give you guys a close-up on this. But I hope that, if you're struggling with the CA finish, then something that I showed you today may have helped you out a little bit. Either way, you guys take care. Get out in your shops, go make that first cut, and get something done. I'll talk to you later.